I'm pleased to welcome Joe Schrum with Halcyon Forge to the stage. So please put your hands together for Joe.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Schrum, and I am a bladesmith. I make knives by hand, one at a time. I brought one, it's not sharp. So a week ago, this was a bar of steel, a 1.5 inch by 1/4 inch piece of steel. A little bit about myself. I'm 27 years old. I started making knives 3 years ago. I went to college and University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg and graduated with a degree in agriculture business. After that, I worked at Budweiser for the Bikirks in Sedalia, and then I worked at the feed mill in Smithton. And throughout this whole time, I was making knives on the side. And with last October, I went full-time, and I've now been a full-time self-employed for the last year. So I guess I'll go back to the beginning of why I started. I went to a gun show, and this guy was selling hunting knives for like $200, and they didn't look that good. So I figured that I could probably do better than that. And now, 3.5 years later, I do this every day. So I use a lot of reclaimed materials. I search for and find things that are worn out, rusty, and it's usually cutting implements, saw blades and stuff like that. And I reforge it, and I'm actually beating on it with a hammer, getting it hot. I've got a power hammer, which is a spring-actuated hammer that was built in 1907, and I've rebuilt that, and I'm using that every day. So, before anybody asks, no, I've not been on Forged in Fire. I've interviewed for it 3 times. But that's kind of a really stretched out, or I guess compacted version of what I do every day. They do it takes me 15 hours to make a knife, and they do it in 3. So it's a little different. And since the onset of that show, the entire knife industry's changed because everybody with a garage thinks that they can make knives and sell them, which isn't necessarily true because there's a lot of science behind all this as well as art. Metal is an entire science in itself, metallurgy. I have to research all my steels I use, and it's kind of a constant, ongoing learning process because I do everything in-house. I'm the only employee or the only one doing it, so everything is done by me. I do the books, I do everything. I work 80 hours a week, and I know one of the things that you guys always ask is, where am I going down the road? And I really don't know. In the last year, I went from making like kind of more production style to making art knives, which like here is a Damascus knife that is 4 bars of steel of Damascus that are welded together. So I do all this by hand, and I have probably 25 hours on that knife, and the blade's that long. So one thing a lot of people ask is price range. And my knives pretty well start at $250 and go up to $750. I make between 3 and 5 a week, and that's about all I can do right now. And I don't necessarily want to go into full like production knife making mode because I enjoy making really nice knives. I guess quality over quantity. So in that aspect, I'm way different than every other presenter here because I'm not in it for money. I eat ramen noodles, 4 nights a week, and I'm fine with it. I wake up, drink coffee, and go make knives. So a lot of things in the last 2 years have changed for me. When I went full-time, and a TV show called Feast came out 1.5 years ago, and they did a 6-minute video. It took them all day to shoot it, and it aired on Channel 9 from southern Illinois to middle Kansas, down to Arkansas, and up to Iowa. And when that started airing, I was getting 40 emails a day from people all over the Midwest people in Chicago were seeing it, and I didn't know what to do. And that was when it aired in July last year, and I quit my job in October. It was, if I'm going to do it, now's the time. So that one thing was enough to push, I guess, change my whole life. And they came in, it took them 6 hours to shoot 6 minutes, and it aired, and they still air it, and I can tell whenever they air it because I'll get about 10 emails. And other than that, when I went full-time, it really changed, I guess, what I do and how I do it, because I had more time to devote to things that I didn't have time for. Like, a knife used to take me 8 hours, now it takes me 15. It's the same knife, it just has more attention to detail. I get slightly more for it, but I'm proud of what I do. Whenever I sell a knife, I'm standing behind it and confident in it. So let's do questions. We'll have a long question. Go ahead.
I've got a lot. Your distribution channels, are you selling direct?
So I try to do as much direct sale as I can, but I also do wholesale to brick and mortar stores. I sell to one guy who does online retail, and he only buys really expensive stuff. I mean, we're talking $600 roughly is the average. But I do to brick and mortar stores, and I do wholesale pricing. And I give them a little better deal because they probably need it. I mean, one guy told me it might be his last year, so try to help him out to keep that going. One's in St. Louis, and then one is in Lawrence, Kansas. And then I'm setting up one in Colorado, hopefully today.
Do you do folding knives or just straight blade?
I mainly do chef knives. I very rarely do hunting knives anymore. It takes the same amount of time, and I get twice as much for something bigger. I don't do folding. It's mainly machines and folding knives. A lot of mill work. So it's not really my thing.
Custom knives. In particular, I saw the set that you did where you had taken somebody's grandfather's file and then also memorabilia special to that family, and you made a pair of knives.
Yep.
How often do you do custom knives, and is that something you want to go further into? Because I know as an artist, custom gets totally different. It's a whole mindset.
I do custom knives, and then I do like my heirloom knives, which is what I call those. My custom knives are just something with a blade and a handle. It's nothing really special. It's just whatever they want of the materials I have. Then the heirloom knives are like, I get a file from your grandfather and one of his shirts, and maybe he was a woodworker in some wood, and I take the shirt and make a laminate out of it, and then make that into for the handle. And I just finished one. So this one was, the blade is from the guy's grandpa that worked on the Wabash line of the railroad. And it was a breaker bar that was 7 foot tall. I forged it out, got a blade, and then the handle is hardwood pine from a schoolhouse and walnut. He owns a brewery in Columbia, Missouri, and some of the walnut is from the bar in the brewery. So stuff like that, it's a lot of work, more than I really enjoy doing. I made this for my neighbor. The Damascus is just some of my Damascus, but the laminate is from, they're both like 60, and both of their fathers passed away. And it's 2 different coats, one from each of their dads, and I alternated the layers into a laminate, and that's what the handle is. So I do stuff like that, and it takes a lot of time, and it's hard for me to market it and get what I need to get for it, so I try to shy away from it. And it takes so much work because I'm getting raw like shirts in, and I have to turn that into a handle and then use that handle. So it's kind of a time-consuming process. I don't think it's great. I love doing it, but it's not very feasible unless I raise my price up to something that's extremely expensive.
Looking at some of these, you talk a little bit about it, the artistic nature and the different coloring on the blade, and does any of that affect the functionality of it? I mean, if it is a chef's blade, are these all the same durability and the same could be used universally.
Yeah, I mean, loaded question, generally speaking, no difference. It doesn't matter. They're all made of different steels, so like a chef that is cutting for 8 hours a day, he might be able to tell the difference between two different types of steels, one having more carbon or less carbon. Go ahead.
You talked about the TV ad that ran for 6 minutes and how many more emails you got. Where else other than Instagram do you help get the word out about your product?
I've got a website that I haven't updated in a year, and a Facebook. I am back ordered for 8 months right now. So I'm like, get this weird point where I don't want to advertise anymore.
Yeah, I would not advertise anymore, Joe, unless you want to work like 100 hours. Is there a part? I know you're an artist, and you and I talked a little bit about this. There's got to be something where you could like get to 60 hours a week working by like letting somebody, an apprentice or something. Is there a portion of it that's less about the artistic thing?
Yeah, and I would love to find an apprentice, like a part-time person. I guess that would be my first step, is finding a part-time person I can rely on, and then hopefully getting them to full-time. But don't need one yet. Like, I could use it, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. Because once I do that, then I really have to make sure I can ramp my production up enough to make it pay for itself.
But you also mentioned that you're still doing all of your own book work and all of your own photography, I'm sure, and advertising and things like that. So, I mean, would you go that route, maybe hiring somebody to offset some of that workload before you get an apprentice?
No.
No.
I mean, that's a good question. It's just, that stuff really doesn't take me that much time.
Okay.
I spend 8 to 10 hours a day in the shop and 2 hours in the house doing book work. So I'd rather have help out there, especially when it's hot.
So when you're making a knife, obviously you have failures.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you handle that? You spend 10 hours crafting a piece of art and then laboring.
Throw it on the ground. I just break it all. It happens, I mean, probably 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 is a failure. And I've had so many failures now that I am happy when they're not a failure. When I do really nice stuff, I take every precaution I can so that I don't have a failure. Usually that's enough. But if I'm doing just a regular carbon blade, they break all the time. I've got 2 buckets full of them. Someone else had their hand up.
Do we have time to see the video? Can you show
Yeah.
us the video?
We can do it. I haven't watched this in a year.
We're in Sedalia, Missouri at Halcyon Forge in a cute blue house. And what is this actually called?
I'm a bladesmith is what I would consider it, but this would be a blacksmith shop and metalworking. We make knives from reclaimed materials, use a lot of different steels, different woods, anything we can pretty much find we can use.
How did you even get into this? How did this become part of your life?
My dad and I were at an outdoor show, and they were selling handmade knives, and I like to make something rather than buy it, so I figured I would research that, and 6 months later, I started making knives. And I started with hunting knives, but they don't get used very often. I want to make something that's used every day by people that are committed to their jobs, so I make chef knives.
That's so cool. You said it's reclaimed steel.
Yes, ma'am.
Where do you find it?
Junkyards, we go to swap meets and stuff. We use automotive parts, reclaimed saw blades. We pick it up anywhere we can find it.
I would assume that the metals have different compounds inside of them depending on what they're used for.
Correct.
So do you have to kind of keep it separate, or you just melt it all down? Does it matter?
We don't melt anything. It's as it is, but we forge it into the shape we want it to be. Most of my knives are sold to Bertarelli Cutlery, and I also do a lot of custom orders.
So custom orders from chefs.
So
So this one is a custom order, and the girl sent me a piece of her apron from her first job, and I made a laminate out of it, and that's what this is.
Oh, cool.
And then she told me that one of her interests is whiskey, so I found some oak whiskey barrel wood, and that's what the rest of the handle is.
It's gorgeous. So what made you realize that you could turn this into your livelihood, your craft?
I wanted to do something different, unique. I wanted to take the old and make it new again, do something beautiful and useful. So I start with reclaimed steel. This would be a saw blade. It was 28 inches when we started. I'll draw my shape on there and then I cut it out.
And you're going to grind down these edges so that it kind of meets your template?
Right. So from there we will shape it closer, and then we will go to the forge and forge it.
So you're making the blade itself, and you're also making the handles. And how do you join the two together?
So I'll have the finished blade, and then I'll find wood, local wood, native wood. There's several places that sell reclaimed wood, and I cut it so there's two pieces of it. Put it on there, epoxy it. I use pins, so it's got mechanical and chemical bonded.
That's so cool.
Start to finish, I have 10 to 12 hours in a knife.
Wow. That takes an amazing amount of dedication. So how long have you been making knives?
Really consistently for 10 months.
So you took 6 months to learn. You've been making knives for about 10 months, and already your knives are being picked up by chefs across the country.
Yeah. So now it's finished. We hand sanded it and treated the handle. It's oiled and it's ready to go to work.
When I was watching you work, it's very exacting. Have you always been a very exacting and focused person?
Not at all. Like, this is the only thing that
What is it about making knives that captured that part of your personality?
it's got everything that a hobby needs to have. Steel, fire, wood, sharp, and effective that can be used every day. It's a great feeling to know that my knives are out there working every night when I'm still up too.
And you got all your fingers done?
No.
Okay, there you go, I was wondering.
It got smashed in a hydraulic log splitter when I was a kid.
When you were a kid.
Any more questions?
Damascus knives,
Yeah,
it has more than just one metal in it, right?
right.
How do you get the other metal in there?
So you take bars of different steels. Two are 1095 and 15H20. One's high nickel, which is in the Damascus, the bright colors. You layer them, alternate them, and tack weld them together with a welder. Put them in the forge and get them to welding heat, which is 2300 degrees, and they're almost white. And you pull them out and you hit them with a hammer, and they're so hot they weld together then, and they are stuck, seamless. Yes.
Insurance. Do you have particular insurance that you've been able to get in regards to this because the type of tools like a small manufacturer?
Yeah.
Is that something I'm needing to?
I had to go through a guy I used to work with at Budweiser. He sells insurance now at a coal camp. State Farm wouldn't give me insurance.
American Family will not chainsaw farm. So, yeah.
Any major insurance company wouldn't cover me.
Right.
So he has to go through some obscure company.
Right.
I don't know if it's even going to help me if I...
Well, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand with some of the costs that come with art products is there's a lot of insurance and things that just really nobody wants to touch you when you're playing chainsaws. You know? or, you know, knives? I mean, do you go to, gun shows and knife shows? Do you,
No.
okay,
I used to go to a craft show in Kansas City, and it was like a really high-end craft show, and I would do pretty well there. But I don't do gun shows because if you've ever been to one, knife don't sell,
right,
especially knives that are $300 or $400. They're selling $10 flea market knives.
right.
I would go to real knife shows, which are all custom knives, but I don't know.
Right. And that's kind of the thing that you probably ran into, where we have lots of people that give us advice, oh, you want to go do this, or oh, you want, you know, and there's not as much spare time to do some of those things. Thank you. Any more questions?
You know, you got to give the talent of making a big time, and I think somehow, you know, just my opinion, you can figure out how to share it up with someone, and just go ahead and go for it, man. You doing something pretty special. Maybe you continue to communicate with folks, more motivated about doing it all, and you can probably take it to the next level, no problem. Seriously.
Thank you.
Good luck to you, man.
Okay, last question I have. So it's been a pleasure having you here. I know you work long hours. I've been trying to put this for months to come here, so thank you. What can we do as a community?
I've been thinking about this question because you asked it to everybody. And I have the perfect answer. I don't want you to buy my knife, but I want you to buy something made in America by someone like a leather maker for a belt. I don't know, you spend $800 for an iPad and use it for a month and put it in the closet, but an $80 belt is too expensive. I don't know, we need to go back to that as a culture. I'm probably the only person in here wearing something made in America.
Oh.